This month, WA's State Library Board celebrates its 60th anniversary, and with that milestone, it's embarking on a new chapter in an effort to remain socially relevant. In an increasingly digital world, WA's 232 public libraries have become far more than just a book borrowing service. Now, they've got a social responsibility to uphold. Charlotte Hamlin reports.
Libraries aren't what they used to be. 1.3 million people came through the doors of the State Library in Perth last year, but for most of them, it's not about books. With the invention of the internet and the constant evolution of digital technologies, the role of the modern library has and will continue to change dramatically.
Public libraries today are much different places to what they were 25 or 30 years ago. The element has gone, much to the, I guess, the disappointment of some, but libraries are active social community spaces.
In 60 years, 232 public libraries have popped up around WA, and State Librarian Margaret Allen says while the service they provide has changed, they remain deeply respected by their communities.
I really think that libraries have a very unique place in our society. They are much loved, and we know that because as soon as anyone tries to shut a library for whatever reason, then there is a huge public response. So libraries are loved. Even by people that don't use them often think that they're very important in terms of the mark of a civil society.
Behind the scenes at the State Library in Perth, teams of people are working to preserve thousands of books, photographs and documents that date as far back as European settlement.
Our role is to preserve this material, and when we talk about for the future, we talk about 400 or 500 years. We hope that in hundreds of years people can look back on what we've collected and saved so they can understand what Western Australia was like. So we do it for that very long-term preservation, but also importantly so that people can access it. We have fabulous collections, but they tend to be locked up within the building because of their physical nature. Through digitising, then we can make it available on the web.
Pat Gallagher has worked in libraries around Western Australia for almost 40 years. She started with 800 books at the local library at Paraburdoo in 1973.
Everything was card-based, and the State Library gave us sent us card records and paper-based records. Everything was paper-based, and but it worked very well. I remember going to a conference in Darwin, seeing images of what would happen with the internet. I had no idea, and thinking, well, we have to think about that. So we did establish one of the first internet connections in our library, and that was very exciting. And of course, that now is such basic resource for information that people just take it so much for granted.
Today, she volunteers at the State Library, helping in the sorting and preservation of material.
At the moment, I'm working on the Library Association, or Australian Library and Information Association, as it's now called, records which go back a long, long way to the beginning of basically West Australian committees and groups, and finding many familiar names and even some letters and memos I wrote myself, so it's very interesting.
There's a whole string of text that starts with HTTP.
While the internet has revolutionised libraries around the world, it's also provided an additional responsibility to get traditional library goers up to speed.
You have typed in the address of where you want to go. Now all you need to do is press enter.
But the library's social responsibility extends to a much younger crowd. The Better Beginnings program travels around the state, promoting the benefits of reading to children to help build early literacy skills.
There is a saying that public libraries serve the community from cradle to grave, and whilst it sounds a bit unfortunate, it's actually true. People engage and can use public library services from the time they're born, right through all the times of their lives.
The challenge now is keeping up with ever-changing technology and demands for an increasingly tech-savvy audience. Pat Gallagher says while that can be daunting at times, it's essential if libraries want to survive for another 60 years.
There's so many things that change that people have a fear about, and librarians can't afford to do that. We have to embrace the changes and fit them to what our community and users need.
Libraries are still one of the few places where you can come and you don't have to spend any money. There's no obligations. You can just walk in and sit quietly in a corner or sit and enjoy something to read. There's very few organisations left, I guess, in society that have that sort of role.
Charlotte Hamlin on the New Look Library near you.